I called him and say, well, Guillaume, you remember when we were sharing that glass of wine? We'll say one day we'll have a vineyard. Let's do it.
So Fabien, I'm glad we got a chance to connect. I guess I saw you last at Vin Expo America a few weeks ago, but I tasted your wines for the first time. I want to say in late September at the City Winery Languedoc tasting, and you spoke very eloquently there. So I'm glad you're giving us a chance again today to connect. Um, we always like to start with get to know you type questions. Many people relate wine to celebration. Can you share a favorite memory that included celebrating with wine?
Definitely, it's probably when I was 12 years old. And it was the first time my parents made me taste a very expensive Burgundy wine. And it was for my birthday. I was in a 3-star Michelin restaurant. It's called the Pic. It's a very old family now. The daughter, she's also a 3-star chef. And it was with my grandparents. And it was an amazing celebration. And that was the first time, and I still remember that moment.
Oh my gosh. Um, I just out of curiosity, you mentioned the wine a little bit. Is that that's your obviously that wasn't your first French wine, but what about the bottle made it so memorable, or was it the occasion itself?
It was a Gevrey Chambertin. So I still remember that. Probably that the occasion was, you know, all the context was created me or allowed me to remember perfectly that wine.
I see.
And most probably I am highlighting or enhancing the memories of that wine because of the context.
Your website, I'm gonna say what word for word what it says, but we want to talk about the meaning behind it. French expatriate friends, wine enthusiasts, wanted to embark on an entrepreneurial adventure that resembles them. For Guillaume Moffy, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, Maufray.
Mofflet, and
Mhm.
Fabien Revol, wine is synonymous with sharing and discovery. So, with that in mind, tell me a bit about your friendship, your partnership, and I'm going to say the adventure that is Brau Winery. How did the two of you meet? And how do you work
Well,
together in this winery?
Guillaume and I, we met when I was living in Asia, in Hong Kong, in 20 years ago. We happened to live in the same building in a dodgy area of Hong Kong called Yau Ma Tei.
Okay.
And we were fond of finishing the week by sharing a glass of red wine.
Mhm.
And we became friends, and we started a small business at that time. And eventually, life made us living apart. But Guillaume is the godfather of my daughter. And when I decided to embark in this crazy project of purchasing a vineyard, I called him and say, well, Guillaume, you remember when we were sharing that glass of wine? We'll say one day we'll have a vineyard. Let's do it. And this is how he shared the entrepreneurial project. And we decided to how do we say, we were not having enough funds, enough money to purchase a Brau, because you need 70% upfront cash in France when you want to purchase an agricultural business. And so it's a lot of amounts, and therefore we had to initiate a fundraising. And Guillaume on his side, myself on my side, we organized events with friends and friends of friends, and that way we raised sufficient money to close the fundraising.
I would say that by itself, just the journey of fundraising with someone is it's either a make or break. It either bonds you closer
Mm.
or you don't talk to each other ever again. But I guess apparently it worked out, so that's wonderful. Um, Before I segue further into the region, you mentioned your background a bit about hospitality and and working in kitchens, and I just don't want to skip over that because I feel like that's such an important part of the story. So, can you tell a little bit about that kitchen experience and the kind of places you've worked in and what you
Mhm.
learned from it?
Well, I started with the family business where they had like bistro, brasserie, so very traditional French style restaurant. Then they also had like Caribbean restaurants, and I worked in gastronomic star restaurants to make some money on the summer. I worked when I was 18 years old. I worked in a diner in New Jersey as a busboy. So I made my first dollars over there. I was not selling wine. It was more Coke and Sprite, but not wine. And then I started my career working in China, where I was managing restaurants for the industrial area, industrial companies, manufacturing for schools. So there I was working with people doing Chinese food. And ultimately, I moved to Middle East, where I was preparing food for the airplane, for Qatar Airways, for instance, preparing food for the construction company or the oil platform. And it was interesting because I had my team, basically. I was not the cook at that time, but my team and we had to prepare food for people from India, people from Asia, people from Middle East. And it was fantastic because um, it opened a lot the view you have on the perception of aromas. And that really helped me when I moved to wine in broad, in opening my views on how someone from a different culture with a different food background, with a different habits, can perceive aromas.
Hmm,
Uh,
it's fascinating. Uh, Maybe a joke, maybe not. I hear France, I hear the Middle East, I hear Asia, and then I hear New Jersey. How did New Jersey become part of the story?
um, by chance, I high school I had we have sometimes an exchange between countries,
Yep.
and my high school was organizing an exchange with a small town in New Jersey,
Okay.
and it happens that the guy I was partnering with,
Mhm.
his family was in the food business.
Ah,
So when I went there and when he came to France, we were spending a lot of time with our parents in their restaurants. And then say, okay, do you want to work summer in the US? I say, of course I want. And so I spent several months working there, and it was fantastic.
and people have been listening to this and reading it and watching. And so obviously they're excited. They want to taste your wine. Tell us how to learn more about your winery. Tell us where we can go to buy your bottles and browse your bottles and learn more about the bottles themselves. Where can we find you?
Oh, so Brau Winery, um, it's the oldest organic winery in France,
Ah,
certified winery in France. We are exporting in 14 countries, Asia, Europe, and now we are starting in the US. We've been distributed in New York at Astor Wine on Lafayette Street. And as we speak, I'm developing the distribution in different states and expanding the distribution in New York. So we are in the early stage of distribution in the US. And the last time we met, I was in New York for that in order
fun.
to meet real partners, the right partners, because that's uh, like what you're doing. Our business is, or our partners, I may say, carry a story. and I need to. Everywhere we are successful is when we have a woman or a man who understood and is passionate as us on explaining the story and why we are doing that, and what we try, what is our DNA, what is our wine DNA.
Before we go, is there anything that we haven't discussed that you'd like to add to the conversation?
Um, just one small word on how the social network like Instagram have changed the relationship people have with wine and winery and winemaker. And we are quite active on Instagram. We have a Brau Wine account, and it's amazing to see how it has created connection and proximity, and a fantastic way for us to explain the all the aspect of our business and what we are doing. And it's really interesting, and I think it has helped a lot of new wine drinkers to enter that, and new generation to have a different perception.
It's
It's the
incredible.
same with Google. Something funny, but as we are close to a very touristic place, a lot of people use Google to recommend them when they want to visit the vineyards. And we are very well ranked on Google, with more than hundreds of comments from people from around the world. And that brings so many tourists from all the nations to our tiny vineyards. You know, it's a tiny place, and without Google, you would never have people from China, from the US, from South Africa. I mean, it's funny.
That's beautiful. All right, one more time. Thank you so much for your time. I've enjoyed talking with you more, and I can't wait to taste your wines again. So
Thank you, Joey. Thank you. It was a pleasure.